freedom has to be remade and re-earned by each generation of man. Eleanor Roosevelt.
We were just trying to get used to so much. There was a curfew at 10 p.m. This is a military regime. We were coming back from some Peace Corps party training event with our fellow Peace Corps trainees, kind of wobbling back home on the streets. I guess it had to be 10 p.m. because that was curfew, and having what looked like 15-year-olds in military attire pointing bayonets at our tummies and telling us to get back in.
It makes sense that one of Denise Deneaux's early literary heroes was a woman who traveled the world with utter fearlessness, because later, when she was assigned to go to Chile, she dealt with guns, danger, threats, and harassment, once sitting in a police station with her new baby in her lap. Her takeaways? Tolerance, resilience, and a greater empathy for repressed people everywhere. I'm Christopher Wurst, and this is
Soft
Power.
Powerful.
Soft
Power.
Powerful stories.
Powerful.
Soft
Powerful stories.
I was born in Oakland, California, but then I was adopted shortly after that and migrated over to the other side of the Oakland Hills, the suburbs of Moraga and Orinda, which is a pretty well-heeled upbringing in the suburbs there. I was affected very much by the nature around me, actually, in that setting. But again, it was a pretty sheltered upbringing. I first thought maybe I'd be a ballerina because I loved ballet, but I was no good at it. I had these turned-in hips, and so it wasn't going to be my future. I also, remember thinking that it would be really, really nice to sing. And it's something that I did all my life. Yeah, I wrote a lot of poetry. I was that kid that was indoors while everybody was playing softball in the court, scribbling down little poetry and feeling very alone. I read a lot as a child, and I do remember a book. I think it was called Mrs. Mike. And it was a true story that this woman wrote. She married a Canadian Mountie and went off into the wilderness and had these adventures, but also so many challenges. But she became so strong that when she came back to visit her family in Boston and they were all crying literally over burnt toast, she just couldn't relate. And I always thought, oh yeah, she's kind of a hero to me, somebody that will just go out and have adventures.
There's some Peace Corps foreshadowing there, I feel.
I know, right? I think there is. At some point or another, honestly, I thought, I would go around the world somehow. At some point in my childhood, I remember seeing TV programs with commercials for the Peace Corps. And it was something I always knew I was going to do somehow from a very young age. It had to be pretty early on. I saw those Peace Corps commercials, and I was aware of Kennedy. I was in 4th grade when he was assassinated. It came about after I graduated from college, and I was married at 20. And my husband at the time, he was game for it. I had said that this was something I'd really like to do. And for some crazy reason, he went along. We were both graduates at UC Berkeley. He was in landscape architecture, and I was in cultural anthropology. We got a call from the Peace Corps asking if we wanted to go to Chile. We said, we'll get back to you. It wasn't an immediate yes, because I had a professor at UC Berkeley who I was working for. I worked part-time as I went through college, and his wife was part of the Chilean resistance movement. So I knew of the coup, I knew people were fighting the regime there in some ways to get back their democracy, because Chile had been a democracy up until the coup. But for some reason, we decided to go anyway. We said yes.
In 1973, Chile's democratically elected president, Salvador Allende, was overthrown in a U.S.-backed military coup led by General Augusto Pinochet, ushering 17 years of a repressive dictatorship. Since then, Chile has faced ongoing challenges of inequality, indigenous rights, and reconciliation with its authoritarian past.
Having been a cultural anthropology student, I knew about culture shock, but it still was culture shock for us. It was just extremely different. Of course, we had each other, which was really helpful. But even just learning the language, the Chilean Spanish is very, very rapid, very melodic, and they cut off words at the end of sentences, like si pues would be sipu. I was looking back at letters that my mother saved from our time there. I remember saying, I feel like I can't even express myself intelligently. I feel like I'm a third or fifth grade level when people ask me a question, and it's kind of humiliating. And I will never, ever judge anyone ever again as trying to learn a language, for being dumb or stupid or anything, because you just feel dumb and stupid. We ended up in a small city, Temuco, which I'd say is about 16 hours by train south of Santiago. Temuco's much larger now than it was then. In fact, in my little report that I wrote about my life there, I said the population of Temuco is roughly 220,000, so it wasn't tiny. It has paved roads, public transportation, and among other things, 2 theaters, a university, and a large outdoor market where the Mapuche people trade and sell animals and produce. The streets are just as likely to be crowded by carts, bullocks, and horses as they are modern buses. Temuco is a city of expansion and contrast between very poor and very rich. I had to find my own job. I ended up working for a milk project that was run by the Catholic Maryknoll Fathers outside of Temuco, a whole dairy project. And with my anthropology degree, I was really interested in going out into the reservations and meeting the people who are called the Mapuche. Mapuche means people of the earth. They were a population of indigenous folks who were pushed by the Spanish as far as Temuco. It's called La Frontera, like the frontier, the border, but they never were actually vanquished by the Spanish. By the time I was there, they were in reservations outside of Temuco, various places.
The Mapuche, Chile's largest indigenous group, have long struggled for recognition, land rights, and cultural autonomy amid centuries of displacement and marginalization.
Initially, I was going to go out there and teach the uses of milk to them, but also with a nutritionist, a Chilean nutritionist named Amanda, who was mentoring me in many ways to teach sanitation in the preparation of foods and to sort of try to help with the level of health and malnutrition that was becoming apparent in people relegated to reservations. There was a lot of prejudice against the Mapuche in those days. I was a gringa dressed in very non-fashionable wear with my high rubber boots up to my knees and my handmade Mapuche manta, which was a heavy wool, black and white poncho. it would shed rain. And it was very useful, too, if you had to squat and pee in the middle of the compound. It would help cover you. I had rides out there with technicians who took care of the milk production, helped with the cows. They were young Mapuche men who were trained to do this. And so we'd go out by jeep there were very muddy roads or dusty. Muddy or dusty. It was either one. And the mud, you'd get stuck and have to be pulled out by ox carts and oxen. Or the dust, no matter what I did, I put my hair in a scarf with a hat on it. I would still come with dust all over me and inside of me. And it was not easy, connections with the ladies out there. The ruca, which is the name it's the Mapuche name for their houses, were constructed of straw at the top and wood sides. They had dirt floors. In the middle often was a fire pit. There would be like a cooking ruca and a sleeping ruca. So the cooking ruca had a crossbar at the top, and the smoke from the fire would go up and cause it to turn black with, I guess, creosote. And so it would also provide shelter from the rain. It would become waterproof. So you'd walk into one of these rucas and your eyes would sting from all the smoke from the fires as they were cooking their delicious bread in the middle of the ashes there. And I did make some good friends, particularly Maria, who was just the same as my age. She might have been 1 year older than me, and she had several children, and she helped host some of my little classes on how to make fresh cheese. and other little classes where the ladies were excessively polite to me. They were so sweet. But I think getting a chance to gather together and observe this young gringa with all this chutzpah to come into your village and try to teach you something. In retrospect, I'm sure it was fairly entertaining to them, but I was received with generosity and just such kindness considering. Yeah, I was often left in the middle of this countryside without a ride home. Somehow the technicians had gone off to do something else, or they'd forgotten to pick me up, or there was miscommunication, and it would be pouring rain outside. And I do remember taking shelter in it must have been like a bus stop or something, and getting underneath the shelter. One of these little boys, a Mapuche little boy, coming in and building me a little fire by hand, just getting a few twigs and a few sticks, building a little fire and keeping me warm in there. That was one generosity of many. I would eventually get to someone's house to talk to them. I'd go in and they'd offer me, whatever they had to eat. And sometimes in winter, that was just potatoes, maybe some dried chiles. And for the privilege, so-called privilege, of having me there and eating their food, they would then make a handmade chair and bring it by ox cart to Matt and I at our house. So there was a lot of generosity, a lot of sweetness among those people. I eventually took from that people that have very, very little, the least in the world, can sometimes be the most generous. I found these letters, and I hadn't read them for decades. Little tiny delicate pieces of paper, aerograms. It was our only way of communicating with family. I don't feel like all those frustrations we had actually ended up being how we felt later on. You forget about a lot of them. I did go out with Amanda, the nutritionist, to a little pueblito named Chol Chol. It was quite a distance from Temuco. I wrote this on the 29th of July, 1978. Dear folks, I've been away for a week, but it feels like years. I went to Chol Chol to help Amanda train selected campesinos in health so that they, in turn, can teach their own communities. Chol Chol had both bridges on either side of the town completely flooded. Whereas during summer, I drove by Jeep down by the riverbed where hundreds of weeping willow trees grow. The winter river swallowed up the trees so that you could not see their tops. Telephone poles were almost completely submerged. So I arrived in Chol Chol by rowboats, an iffy, half-sunken green moldy affair, and a rower with strong arms and a lot of initiative. He was charging 5 pesos a person. Imagine how much water there must have been to back up a river so. The ocean couldn't receive that quantity of water quickly enough, and so the waters grew higher, hardly moving. By Wednesday, it was apparent that the faraway ocean was once again accepting water, and in the middle of the lakeish spread of muddy liquid, you could see some rapids, which meant the waters were leaving. By the final Saturday, the water had lowered itself so well that the small plank bridge was once again visible and usable. I know how Noah must have felt. The next page says that last page got wet in the rain. I go on to say that my week in Chol Chol was not fun, but it certainly had its letter-worthy moments. For instance, I was, for reasons unknown, selected to show the young men where the bathrooms were and what showers and sinks were meant for. I think I know why, but in retrospect, I think it was very entertaining for everybody. But I suppose a shower would look like a nice place to relieve yourself if you had never seen one, nor a toilet in your whole life. Ah, the wonders of indoor plumbing. Toilets look like the good places to wash feet, face it. So I pointed and gave brief sentence explanations that probably didn't aid them too much. But Senora, 2 young men of 20 asked, where can we wash our feet? My answer was to say either the shower or, at this point I raised my foot to sink level, the sink. I should mention that Mapuche culture mandates the washing of feet every night before bedtime. This is an extremely logical idea since most Mapuche children don't have shoes. The custom lingers on even though a Mapuche man has a good pair of rubber work boots. And every night the young men marched into the bathroom and came out with wet feet, holding their socks and shoes in hand. Incident number 2. I am teaching a class in basic health and how to prevent parasites. The methodology is not mine, but of the National Health Service. It is a system of question and answers. Question: what are the 3 types of human lice? Answer: hair lice, body lice, and pubic lice. But the word used is órganos sexuales. Senora, what are sexual organs? And he wasn't joking. At this point, my Spanish had totally failed, and in my pure astonishment, I realized he really wasn't joking. Apparently, the expression sexual organ or any other kind of organ as pertains to the body is not used in Mapuche. These young men spoke Mapuche, and Spanish was a second language to them as it was to me. I resorted to having another student of wizened years explain and suppressed a laugh that unfortunately surfaced a few times. I just couldn't help it. Some teacher I am, huh? And then I go on to say, well, it's difficult enough to teach almost adults of any culture. Compound this with a very imperfect ability to speak a language, and it's bound to cause problems. My students laughed at me a number of times when I couldn't figure out why, and my fellow workers, Amanda, Inez, Clementina, became visibly bored when I tried telling a short story to liven up conversation. It's a terrible feeling to start a sentence, notice everyone looking vacantly away. You prefer to stop right there, but saving face demands a decent finish. Matt, Chris, and I, Chris was our roommate, laugh over this. it happened to all of us. Never again will I think a person with a Mexican accent and can't speak very well is dumb. I don't think I thought they were dumb before, but I certainly didn't now. I look at myself and know how stupid, how ignorant I must have looked at times simply because I don't understand the language. I can't form the words in my mouth. It is at this point you notice people talking to you as if you were 5 years old or a dog. Sit, Denise, sit. And it is a big slice of humble pie, let me tell you. Anyway, I go on to talk a little more about that. And then the last night in Chol, the students had a goodbye dinner, and 2 guitarists came, played some danceable music, and being 70 men, 3 girl students, and 4 lady professors, I danced my, ass off. Somehow as the night progressed, my partners got shorter and shorter and more inept. And if the song was slow, I preferred to go hide. But instead I stuck it out, dancing slowly while my partner, 1 foot shorter, took the wrong arm and stumbled along with me. I'm not famous for my ability to follow either. I saw Amanda and Clementina biting their lips so as not to laugh. Most of the young men, some are actually older than I, were very pleasant, nice guys, but the dancing was sure funny, not to mention exhausting. Then the cueca started up, and it was very enjoyable watching the couples execute a graceful cueca. I bowed out of this part. The Chilean cueca is beautiful to watch. They start by clapping hands. It's got some echoes of Spanish flamenco in that sense. So some hand clapping initially, and then they circle each other using scarves in the air around each other's heads. Anyway, it's a typical Chilean dance, and it was really fun to watch. The return trip from Cholchol to Temuco was beautiful. The skies had cleared for that day, and the volcanoes looked enormous and close in their pure snowy whiteness. I counted 5 gigantic volcanoes and could even see the mountain range connecting them. It gives the campo a whole new look when the volcanoes are visible. Everything seems so much more whole, and it is truly a fairyland. One could pick out thatched huts for miles where they hadn't been visible for that distance before. The pica bushes, which grow all over, like coyote bush with thorns, had yellow flowers and the land was green. I love southern Chile. So that was one of the letters I wrote to my parents.
It's beautiful.
I flew into Los Angeles. I was leaving with a little baby in tow, my little son, Aaron. You know, this was a military regime. There was sort of a dark undercurrent to everything that was happening around us. Amanda, my coworker, she fled to Argentina. The Catholic Maryknolls were part of the Catholic community, which was the only voice of dissent in Chile at the time. We had all of our letters opened by error. It said open by error and then taped shut. We were called in by the secret police somewhere towards the end of our stay, their version of the secret police, and questioned, baby in arms. There was a lot of consternation about leaving the country. I had to prove my son was mine, which, that just wounded me to the core to have to even prove that he was my son. At some point or another in our stay, the Jeep that I was riding out to the campo, out to the countryside with Mapuche technicians was blown up. So there were a lot of undercurrents to our time there. People that didn't really want to talk about politics, obviously. It was dangerous for them. And so we traveled a bit on the way home. We traveled to Ecuador. I remember us being in a hotel room and military coming in through the door to question us or something. And I just had it. I'm like, you know what? You guys can travel the rest of South America. I don't care. I'm going home. So I took my son and we traveled back. It's a very long plane ride. We're riding back into Los Angeles. It's a typical Los Angeles airport, but it was so eye-opening. It was reverse culture shock. My young son and I were both pretty sick for the first 2 to 3 weeks after we arrived, and we were staying at my parents' house. And even wall-to-wall carpeting suddenly looked like something that you shouldn't be stepping on. You should be sleeping on it instead or something. So I realized as I came back to the United States that I had a whole different perspective.
We're nearing the end, alas. But I want to let Denise respond to our Aunt Deb.
I learned about the world in school. What did I miss?
It's so opening to a person. You grow feelers for the rest of the world, or almost like an extra limb that reaches out to that other country. And you see a way of living that's very different than your own. You also see the similarities, but it gives you perspective. And it's an education that you won't get going to a university or anywhere other than traveling and really, really digging in there. We had so many challenges, and I think everyone that does this sort of work does, but it also gives you a sense of resilience, that, hey, we didn't have anywhere to live when we got stationed in Temuco, but we managed to find it. I managed to find myself a job. You get a sense of facility with your life. It changes you in good ways because you really get a sense of empathy for what other people in other countries go through and live. It gives you a sense of perspective on your own country as well. Peace Corps was called the Peace Corps for a reason. It's to establish peace among nations. And whether or not we made any real inroads in environmental education or sanitation education or anything, we did make friends and have a great feeling of camaraderie with the people of that country. So it does foster peace, definitely. I tell my aunt that it's worth it. For sure.
Denise Deneaux enjoyed a varied career before retiring in 2024. A graduate of the University of California, Berkeley in cultural anthropology, she taught Spanish and music in Waldorf elementary schools for 23 years. She worked as an executive assistant for numerous high-level organizations. Simultaneously, she pursued singing and songwriting. Her other passion is the pursuit of peace. She served on the board of the Rogue Valley Peace Choir and is currently on the board of the Ashland Community Food Bank. Her son Aaron and daughter-in-law Caitlin are filmmakers. Aaron is currently filming season 4 of Netflix The Diplomat. Denise's daughter Allison teaches music at a Waldorf school and is recording and performing her own original songs. Thank you so much for listening. You can find out much more by visiting our website at softpowerfulstories.org. There you can learn more about our guests, see pictures of them in action, find out the music that we use, and, of course, leave feedback. We would love to hear from you. My name is Christopher Wurst. I'm the host and producer of Soft Powerful Stories. Until next time.